I've been working the subway tunnels for 23 years, long enough that the dark feels like an old friend who never quite forgave me for something. Most nights it's just me, a headlamp, and the low hum of the third rail that can cook a man if he forgets where he is. The abandoned BMT spur under Lower Manhattan is my regular run. Old Canarsie Line sections nobody's used since the 60s, boarded up and forgotten by everyone, except the rats and the water that drips from 1,000 cracks overhead. I like the quiet, or I used to. It was late October, the kind of damp that gets inside your bones no matter how many layers you wear. I was checking for signal corrosion between Atlantic and Utica when my light caught movement ahead. Not the quick scuttle of a rat, something deliberate. A man walking heel to toe straight down the center of the third rail like it was a tightrope. He had on an old MTA jacket, the reflective stripes cracked and gray with age, and he was moving backward, real slow, knees bending wrong with every step. But his head, Lord, his head never turned. It stayed facing me the whole time, neck locked forward, eyes shining in my beam like a deer that knows the car's already too close. I called out, "Hey buddy, you're gonna fry." My voice bounced down the tunnel and came back smaller, like the walls didn't want it either. He didn't flinch, just kept scraping backward, boots making this soft grind against the rail cover. I stepped closer, boots splashing in the black water that always pools there. And that's when the light hit his face full. The skin was loose, hanging off the cheekbones like wet laundry, sliding a little with every step. His eyes were open wide but milky, no color left, just two wet corns pressed into dough. I felt my stomach drop straight through the ballast rock. I should have turned around right then. Instead, I followed him. Don't ask me why. Maybe because nobody walks the third rail and lives, and I needed to know how he was doing it. Maybe because I'd been down there alone too long and the dark was starting to talk back in ways I didn't like. We went like that for 3 old stations, ghost platforms with the tiles busted out and weeds growing through the cracks where pigeons shit on everything. I kept my light on him the whole way. Every time he planted a heel, the print in the dust pointed forward, toward me, even though he was moving away. That's what finally made my skin crawl worse than the face. The tracks he left said he was coming, not going. I lost him somewhere past the old Myrtle Avenue platform where the ceilings collapsed into a mountain of brick and rebar. My radio crackled, just static and breathing, and I took that as my cue to head back. I told myself it was some junkie on PCP, some trick of the light. But I didn't sleep that night. Kept seeing those milky eyes staring from the foot of my bed in Queens, like the tunnel had followed me home. Next night I went back down with Tommy Ruiz, figured 2 lamps were better than 1. We didn't see anything for hours. Then Tommy's light swung across the same stretch of rail, and there he was again, closer this time, maybe 50 yards off. Same backward walk, same dead stare. Tommy whispered Jesus, Mary, and reached for his radio, but I grabbed his wrist. Something told me noise was the wrong move. We watched until the figure melted into the dark, and when we walked the rail afterward, the footprints were fresh, pointing straight at the spot where we'd been standing. Third night I went alone again. I told my wife I had overtime. Truth was, I couldn't stay away. He was waiting for me under the old Dean Street platform, so close I could smell him, wet concrete and something sweet like spoiled milk. He'd stopped walking, just stood there on the rail, head cocked a little too far to the left, staring. I raised my lantern and the light slid across his face again. The skin had slipped lower, bunched around the collar like a turtleneck pulled wrong. Underneath was raw and red, glistening. He lifted one hand, slow, and pointed behind me with a finger that bent backward at the knuckle. I didn't want to turn around. You know how you feel when the room goes too quiet and you realize you're not alone? It was that, but colder. I turned anyway. Nothing there but the tunnel mouth yawning black. When I looked back, he was moving again, faster now, heel toe, closing the gap. The footprints started appearing in front of him, fresh prints blooming out of nowhere, pointing at me like arrows. I ran, not ashamed to say it. I ran until my lungs burned and the rail ties blurred under my boots. When I finally stopped and looked back, the prints kept going, past where I stood, straight toward the service ladder I'd come down. I didn't go back the fourth night. Stayed topside, drank coffee in the Atlantic Terminal shack with the radio turned loud. Around 2 a.m., the chatter went strange. Units responding to Hoyt's Schermerhorn, lower level, maintainer down on the tracks. I knew before they said the name, knew before they described how they found him. They said Danny Alvarez was sitting with his back against the third rail, legs straight out like he just decided to rest a minute. Except his head was turned clean around, chin resting between his shoulder blades, eyes wide open and gone. Plucked out neat, no blood in the sockets, just dark holes staring down his own spine. His flashlight was still on, pointed at the tunnel he'd been facing. The beam lit up a single set of boot prints walking away, backward, into the dark. I haven't been underground since. They gave me disability for the nerves, said the job finally got to me. My wife thinks I'm jumpy because of what happened to Danny. She doesn't know I still check the locks 3-4 times before bed. Doesn't know that some mornings I find dust on the hallway floor that wasn't there when we went to sleep. Perfect heel-toe prints leading from the bedroom to the fire escape, always fresh. Sometimes when the trains rumble under the street, I feel it in my teeth, that same vibration I felt watching him walk. And I swear late at night, if I press my ear to the floor, I can hear it, the slow scrape of boots on ballast rock, getting closer, one deliberate step at a time, coming backward, but coming all the same. I don't know what he wants. Maybe just someone to walk the rail with him. Maybe he's still trying to get where he was going the night the tunnel took him. All I know is those prints never quite reached the bed. Not yet. But every morning they're a little closer, and the dust smells like wet concrete and something sweet underneath. I keep a knife under the pillow now. Not that I think it'll help. Some things you don't fight.
I used to close the bar on 14th every night except
Sunday.
over your own shoulder. By the time I wiped the last glass and locked up, the city had already gone quiet the way only New York can, like it's holding its breath until the sun comes back. I take the 6 uptown from Union Square, usually the 312, sometimes the 337 if the drunks kept me late. That train at that hour is mostly empty. A nurse asleep on her purse, a couple kids with paint under their nails, me smelling like lime and cheap bourbon. I like the ride, 28 minutes of not having to talk to anybody. One night in November 2019, the rain was coming down hard enough to make the sidewalk smoke. I got on at Bleecker, soaked through, and the car was dead empty except for the flicker of the fluorescence and that wet dog smell the seats get. I sat near the back, closed my eyes for a second, and when the doors chimed at Astor Place, I looked up and saw her. Little girl, maybe 7 or 8, sitting sideways on the bench with her knees pulled up. Yellow dress, once bright, now the color of old mustard, hem dragging on the floor and wet like she'd walked through puddles knee-deep. Her hair was dark and tangled, hanging over her face in ropes. Both arms were wrapped around a ratty plastic bag stuffed so full it looked ready to split. She was pulling things out of it one by one, those little paper transfers we used to get before MetroCard took over everything. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all creased and soft from being handled too much. She laid them out on a seat beside her in neat rows, smoothing each one with the flat of her hand like she was lining up dominoes. The train lurched between stations and the lights stuttered. Every time the doors opened at a platform nobody uses anymore, she leaned way out, farther than any kid should, and plucked another transfer out of the air. Not off the ground, out of the air, like the wind was feeding them to her one at a time. I told myself it was a trick of tired eyes, but I watched her do it 3 separate stops: Spring Street, Canal, Worth. Each time the door slid open on nothing but darkness and dripping tile, she reached out with those small dirty fingers and came back with another slip of paper. By 51st Street, it was just the 2 of us. The lights had settled into a sick yellow hum, the kind that makes everybody look half dead. I don't know what made me speak. Maybe the whiskey, maybe the rain, maybe just the wrongness of a child alone down there at that hour. I cleared my throat and said, "Hey, sweetheart, you okay? You shouldn't be riding by yourself." She didn't look up right away, just kept sorting, fingers moving quick and sure. Then she lifted her head, real slow, and smiled. Her teeth were too white, too even, like somebody had bleached them in a cup. "I'm waiting for my transfer," she said, voice soft, a little hoarse, like she hadn't used it in years. "The one with my stop on it." I started to stand, meaning to move closer, maybe see if she had a tag or a bracelet or anything with a name. That's when she reached into the bag and pulled one out different from the rest. It was clean, crisp, the ink still black instead of faded gray. She held it up between two fingers so I could read it plain. My name was printed across the top in block letters. Below that, the date, November 14th, 2019. And underneath, in the little box where they used to stamp the expiration, it just said 59th Street in red. I felt the air leave my chest like somebody punched me. 59th was my stop, always had been. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. The train gave a jerk harder than normal, and the lights went black. Not flickered, black, the kind of dark that presses on your eyeballs. The car filled with this smell, coppery sweet, like pennies left in the rain. When the lights came back maybe 5 seconds later, she was gone. The seat was empty, the transfers scattered across the floor like somebody had kicked the piles apart. The plastic bag was gone too. I stood there swaying with the train, staring at the mess, and felt something sticky under my right shoe. I lifted my foot, and there was one transfer stuck to the sole, glued on with a streak of something dark and thick. My name, the date, 59th Street, all still perfect. But now, down in the corner where the time usually printed, the numbers were bleeding, running together like wet ink. I peeled it off with shaking fingers and stuffed it in my coat pocket. Didn't know why, just knew I couldn't leave it there. The doors opened at 59th and I got off like always, walked the 8 blocks to my apartment in the rain. Didn't sleep, kept taking the paper out, looking at it under the kitchen light. The blood, or whatever it was, had dried brown and flaky. I told myself in the morning I'd call transit or NYPD or somebody. Told myself it was a prank, a sick joke, anything but what it felt like. Morning came and went. I never made the call. Something stopped me every time I reached for the phone, like a hand on my wrist I couldn't see. A week later I pulled a late shift again. Same train, same car if I could manage it. She wasn't there. I almost felt disappointed. Almost. The transfer stayed in my wallet. I don't know why I kept it. I moved it from coat to coat every winter, like a bus pass I was scared to lose. Sometimes I'd take it out on the subway and the expiration would be normal, 547 or whatever the machine had printed however many years ago. Other times, late at night when the apartment was quiet, I'd fish it out and the numbers would be different. 68th Street, 86. Once it just said end of line in shaky red letters that definitely weren't there before. I started noticing things after that. A little girl in a yellow dress on the platform at Times Square, always too far away to catch up to. A flash of yellow in the window of the express train that blew past without stopping. Once, I swear, I saw her standing at the very end of the Queensbound platform at 3 a.m., holding that same plastic bag, watching the local pull in. When the doors opened, she wasn't there. In 2021, they finally killed off paper transfers for good. Machines stopped spitting them out. You'd think that would end it. It didn't. Last month, I came home from work and the wallet was on the kitchen table, open. I never leave it there. The transfer was on top of the cards, clean again, no blood. The expiration had changed one more time. It now reads Bleecker Street and the date is tomorrow. I haven't taken the 6 train since. I walk or take the bus or just stay in. But some nights I still hear it, the chime of doors opening down the block. The low rumble under the street that sounds like a train that never quite arrives. And when I check the paper, real quick before I can talk myself out of it, the time is always a few minutes earlier than the last time I looked. I don't know what happens when it finally runs out. I don't know what stop she's waiting for me at. All I know is the little girl is still collecting, and sooner or later, every rider has to get off somewhere. I keep the transfer in my pocket now. It's soft as cloth from being folded and unfolded so many times. Sometimes when the radiator clanks and the room is dark, I feel the paper move against my leg, like it's trying to unfold itself, like it knows the train is coming, even if I pretend I can't hear it.
I started on the midnight signal gang in '09, right after the economy ate my carpentry business alive. 12-hour shifts under Times Square, crawling through service tunnels most people don't even know exist, fixing relays that keep the trains from smashing into each other. The money was steady and nobody bothered you. That was the part I liked best. Nobody bothered you. Just you, the rats, and the low electric hum that gets inside your head after a while. The tunnel we call the Throat runs parallel to the old shuttle track, the one they shut down in '87 after the bricks started falling. It's narrow, wet, and the air tastes like pennies. You walk single file, boots splashing through water that's been there since before your daddy was born. My partner that winter was Lewis, but he called out sick 3 nights straight with the flu, so it was just me, my headlamp, and the echo that always followed half a step behind. First night alone, I heard it soft, like somebody mocking me from 20 yards back. Same Queen's accent, same tired drag on the words I get when I'm running on coffee and spite. "Turn the game down, stupid," it said, right after I muttered it to myself. I laughed, figured the tunnel was throwing my voice funny. Happens sometimes. You talk, the walls talk back. No big deal. Second night, it waited until I was deep in, past the last man door where the bulbs are all burned out. I was tightening the conduit when I heard myself say, Ma's maiden name was Castellano before she married the old man. I hadn't said it out loud, hadn't even thought it in years. My mouth was full of the wintergreen chew I keep in my lip, and I damn near swallowed it. I spun around, light cutting wild across the brick. Nothing but dripping water and my own breath fogging. Then it came again, softer, like it was standing right behind my ear. "You told Teresa the overtime was mandatory. You lied." That one hit hard. Teresa and I were barely speaking that week. I'd stayed late because the bar on 42nd has 2-for-1 well drinks on Tuesdays. I hadn't told a soul. I clicked the radio, dead air. Batteries were fresh, but the thing just hissed at me like an angry cat. I started walking back the way I came, trying to keep my steps even, telling myself it was low frequency interference or sewer gas messing with my head. The voice followed, matching my pace. Only now it sounded younger, like me at maybe 15, before my voice dropped all the way. "Keep up, slow ass," it said, laughing the same laugh I used to have when I thought the world couldn't touch me. Third night, I brought a recorder, one of those little digital ones my daughter gave me for Christmas. Thought if I caught it, I could prove I wasn't cracking up. I set it on the relay box and went about my work. When I played it back topside, there was nothing but my breathing and a drip of water. Except right at the end, faint under the hiss, a kid's voice. "Don't leave me down here, Dad." That word stopped me cold. Dad. My boy Mateo was 8 that winter, asleep in Woodside with his mother, wondering why I smelled like tunnel water and regret. I never had another kid, never wanted one after him. I sat in the proof shack until the sun came up, staring at the recorder like it might bite me. I went back the 4th night because the job was the job, and the mortgage didn't care if I was hearing ghosts. This time I left the radio off and walked slower, listening. The voice was waiting under the old platform, right where the shuttle used to stop. It started the second my light crossed the rusted edge of the track. "Remember when you pushed Richie off the roof for calling my name?" it asked. And Lord help me, I did remember. I was 13, he was 14, and he hit the pavement wrong and never walked right again. Nobody ever proved it was more than horseplay. The voice sounded exactly like me that summer, angry and small and scared. It knew every secret I'd ever buried, every lie I told my wife, every time I looked at my son and wondered if he'd turn out better if I just wasn't around. I started towards it, couldn't help myself. The tunnel narrowed, ceiling dripping on my hard hat like slow rain. With every step, the voice got younger. 11, 9, 7. By the time I reached the chain link gate that blocks the old shuttle platform, it sounded just like Mateo. Same little rasp he gets when he's excited. "Wait up, Dad," it called, laughing like we were racing home from the bodega. My light found the gate hanging open for the first time in 20 years, chain cut clean. Beyond it, the platform stretched black, tiles busted, weeds growing through the cracks like the city had already forgotten it was ever there. I stepped through. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. Light, quick, bare feet on concrete. Not mine. Mine was still moving forward, heavy in steel-toe boots. I turned, and my headlamp caught nothing but empty tunnel. The footsteps kept coming, closer, slapping wet like a kid running through puddles. The voice was right on my heels now, no echo at all, just breath against my neck. "You left me once. Don't leave again." I ran. Not proud of it, but I ran like hell. Boots pounding, breath ripping out of me, light jerking wild across the walls. Every slap of those bare feet answered right behind, gaining. I didn't look back until I hit the man door and slammed it shut, shaking with hands. The footsteps stopped on the other side. Then the voice, small and hurt, the way Mateo sounds when he thinks I'm mad at him. I just wanted to come home. I sat with my back against that door until the next crew found me at 6:30, crying like a damn fool and refusing to open up until they threatened to call the union. They wrote it up as panic attack, sent me to psych. I took the 3 weeks paid leave and never went back underground. Some nights now, when the radiator knocks and the apartment's quiet, I hear it through the floorboards. A kid, running, laughing, calling, "Wait up, Dad," from somewhere deep under the building. The express track that hasn't carried a train since Reagan was president. I stand on the platform at Times Square sometimes just to see if I can feel it, that pull toward the edge. I never step past the yellow line anymore. But I keep thinking about how easy it would be to slip down when nobody's looking. Follow that voice back to whatever's left of the boy I used to be before I taught myself how to leave people behind. I don't sleep much. When I do, I dream of bare feet running through black water, getting closer every night, and a little
I've been
hand
riding the
reaching
F
out
train
in the
home to
dark
Forest Hill
for a
since I was
father who's
19.
already too
Back when
far
the car
ahead to
still
turn
had that
around.
orange and brown upholstery and the doors closed like bear traps. 22 years of the same route, same sway, same half dream between stations when the lights dim and the city forgets you exist. Most nights I'm one of maybe 6 souls scattered through the car, everybody pretending the others aren't there. You learn the rhythm, the little sigh the brakes give coming out of J Street, the way the tunnel lights strobe across the windows between 57th and Lex like a dying heartbeat. After a while, it feels like the train knows you better than most people do. It was late February, the kind of cold that makes the river steam. I'd worked a double at the hospital, orderly on the burn ward, which is its own kind of hell. And by the time I got on at 2nd Avenue, the car was empty except for an old woman asleep under her scarf and a guy in a Carhartt jacket nodding off against the map. I took my usual seat, last row by the window, and let my head rest against the glass. The train pulled out smooth, lights humming low, and I closed my eyes for what I thought would be 30 seconds. The stall woke me. Not a jerk, just a soft dying away, like somebody turned the volume down on the world. The lights dropped to half, then steadied at that sickly orange they go when the power's sick. Over the speaker, the conductor came on, voice flat. "Folks, we're being held momentarily due to a power dip. Shouldn't be long." The old woman never stirred. Carhartt guy lifted his head, looked around once, and went back to sleep. Me, I looked out the window, because that's what you do when the train stops between stations. You look for something to make sense of it. We were hung in that stretch over the East River, halfway to Roosevelt Island, where the tunnel's nothing but concrete and black water on both sides. The third rail runs exposed there, no cover, just a thick orange plank and the contact shoes skimming sparks. Except the section we were on was supposed to be dead. Had been dead since they rerouted the juice in '03 after a maintainer got cooked. Everybody who rides the F knows that stretch is dark. It wasn't dark. There was a glow coming up from below the window, soft electric blue, the color the rail gets when it's carrying 600 volts and happy about it.
I leaned closer to the glass, breath fogging, and that's when I saw it crouched on the rail like a dog at a water bowl. Human shape, but wrong, the way a shadow's wrong when the light's behind it. Arms too long, ending in hands that almost touched the ballast. Knees bent backward, spine curved in a way that should have snapped it. The skin was black, not brown, not dark, black, like charred meat left too long on the grill, shiny in places where it is split and healed over wrong. It was drinking, head down, mouth pressed to the wood, pulling at something that steamed when it left the rail. Little blue sparks danced around its lips like static. I should have looked away. Instead, I watched it feed, slow and patient, the way my patients on the ward sip water through cracked lips when the morphine's wearing off. Then it lifted its head. The face was mine. Not a copy, not a twin. My face, but burned down to the muscle and stretched tight. Eyes milky with cataracts, mouth wider than it had any right to be. The burn scars shifted when it looked at me, rearranging themselves into the same tired lines I see in the mirror every morning, only melted and wrong. It smiled with my mouth, teeth blackened and cracked, and raised one hand in a little wave, fingers fused together like they'd been dipped in wax and cooled crooked. The train lurched hard, throwing me back in the seat. Lights went black, not dim, not flickering, black, the kind of dark that has weight. I smelled ozone and cooked meat. Somebody screamed, short and cut off, like they thought better of it. When the lights came up, maybe 4 seconds later, the car was quiet again. The old woman was staring at the floor between her shoes. Carhart guy had both hands over his face, shoulders shaking. Nobody looked at each other. Nobody ever does after something like that. We rolled into 21st Queens Bridge like nothing happened. Doors opened, closed. People got on, people got off. I sat frozen until my stop, walked home through the cold without feeling it. Didn't sleep. Kept seeing that burned thing wearing my face, waving like it was glad to see me. Next morning, I found a handprint. It was on the metal bench beside where I'd been sitting, perfect outline of a right hand seared right into the stainless steel. My hand, same size, same scar across the knuckles where I caught it in a car door when I was 12. Only the fingers were melted together, webbed like a duck's foot. The skin of the print blistered and raised. I touched it, and the metal was still warm. I could smell my own skin cooking. I didn't ride the F for a week, took the bus, paid for cabs, walked when I had to. Told myself it was a one-time thing, some kind of mass hallucination from bad ventilation. But the handprint stayed. I checked. Every night I'd go to the yard after my shift, wait until the platform was empty, and there it was, darker than the rest of the bench, fingers fused and waiting. Second week I had no choice. Double shift again, ice on the roads, buses running late. I got on at West 4th with my heart hammering so loud I was sure the guy next to me could hear it. The car was crowded for once, standing room only. I kept my eyes on the floor, counted the ads above the windows, anything not to look outside. We crossed the river fine, lights stayed bright. I started to breathe again. Then the stall, same spot. Same soft dying away. The lights dropped to orange, and the conductor gave the same flat apology. I didn't want to look. I swear I tried not to. But the window was right there, and the glow was already crawling up the glass, brighter this time, hungry. It was standing now, tall as the car, back bent so his head almost touched the ceiling of the tunnel, arms hanging loose, fingers dragging sparks along the concrete. The skin had split in more places, raw red underneath pulsing like a heartbeat. It pressed his face to my window, cheek flattened against the glass, and breathed out a cloud of steam that smelled like burned hair. My face, but the eyes were gone, just black pits leaking something thick. It opened his mouth, and the glass fogged with my breath from the inside at the exact same time. The train moved, lights came up. Nobody screamed this time. They just stared harder at the floor, like if they didn't acknowledge it, the thing might forget they were there. I got off at Forest Hills Gardens and walked home in a daze. My right hand was numb, pins and needles from the wrist down. When I got inside and turned on the light, I understood why. The skin between my fingers was blistering, pulling tight, starting to web.
Not bad yet, just enough to make the spaces look shallow, like the skin was thinking about melting together. I ran it under cold water until I couldn't feel anything. Took 3 of the good pain pills we keep locked up at work. Didn't help much. It's been 8 months. The hand is worse. The fingers are fused now, pinky and ring locked together, index starting to stick to the middle when I'm not paying attention. The skin's gone shiny in places, dark like old bacon left in the pan. Doctors say it's some kind of chemical burn, maybe acid in the tunnel air. They want to separate the fingers, do grafts. I let them talk. I know what it is. I still ride the F. Not because I want to, because sometimes the stall happens and the lights go down and I need to see how close it is. Last time, 3 weeks ago, it didn't wave. It just stood on the dead rail with its arms out, waiting. The face is almost perfect now. My face, if I'd been the one cooked all those years ago, instead of the guy they scraped off the contact shoe. The eyes are clearing. Soon they'll be brown again. Soon they'll be mine. I keep the burned hand in my pocket when I ride. Sometimes I feel the fingers twitch, reaching for the window like they remember where home is. Sometimes the conductor's voice over the speaker sounds a little like mine, tired and flat, giving apologies nobody believes anymore. I don't know if it wants back in or if it wants me to come out. All I know is, every time we cross that stretch of river, the glow gets brighter, the hand gets tighter, and the space between me and whatever's waiting down there gets smaller. Some nights I dream I'm the one crouched on the rail, drinking deep, feeling the juice burn away everything that hurt. And when I wake up, the gauze is soaked black, and my reflection in the bathroom mirror smiles with a mouth that's starting to look too wide. The train still stops there sometimes. When it does, I don't look out the window anymore. I just close my eyes and wait for the lights to come back, feeling the pull in my melted fingers, like a promise that hasn't decided when it's due.
Something about the way it rattles over the Williamsburg Bridge, city lights sliding across the windows like spilled coins, made the long shift at the warehouse feel finished. I'd get on in Marcy Avenue with maybe 4 other people scattered through the car, everybody pretending the rest of us were ghosts. My stop was Canal, then a 10-minute walk under the Manhattan Bridge to the little studio I could barely afford. I always wore the same gray hoodie, soft, faded, pockets deep enough for keys and phone and the quiet I carried home. The first time it happened was a Tuesday in March, cold enough that the breath hung in front of your face even underground. The train was empty by the time we left Bowery, just me and the hum of the lights and the soft sway that rocks you half to sleep. Canal came up slow, brakes sighing like always. Doors slid open and I stood, ready to step out into the usual dead quiet. The platform was full, shoulder-to-shoulder people, all the way from the far staircase to the very end where the tiles turned black with old gum. Every single one wore the same gray hoodie I had on, hoods up, heads bowed just enough that I couldn't see faces. They stood perfectly still, packed so tight their sleeves touched, like they'd been waiting a long time and had learned how to take up no room at all. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but the glow didn't seem to reach under those hoods. Just darkness, thick and shifting, the way heat looks above asphalt in summer. I froze halfway out the door. The chime started, that 2-note warning, and something in my chest knew I didn't belong out there with them. I stepped back in and the doors closed an inch from my nose. The train pulled away and I watched through the glass as every hooded head turned, slow, all at once, to follow me. No faces, just that moving dark inside the hoods, like smoke trying to find a shape. I told myself it was late, I was tired, maybe a flash mob or some art school stunt. I got off at Chambers instead and walked a long way home under the bridge, hood down, hands shaking so bad I could barely light my cigarette. Next night I almost took the M, but the J was right there and I didn't want to look scared of my own route. I kept the hood down, sat where I could see the doors, told myself nothing would happen. The car emptied the same as always. Bowery came and went, Canal lit up on the sign and the train slowed. Doors opened on nothing. The platform was deserted,
just the usual grime and flickering bulbs and the smell of piss baked into the tile. I laughed once, short and ugly, started to stand, and saw the one figure, standing dead center under the middle light, wearing my hoodie, hood up, facing me. The darkness inside the hood moved the way dark water moves when something big passes underneath. No face, no eyes, just that slow swirl. It didn't have hands I could see, but the sleeves lifted a little, like it was raising arms in greeting. The door started to close. I sat back down hard. The train rolled forward, and I watched the figure stay exactly where it was, centered in the window, until the tunnel swallowed it. I never got off at Canal again. Changed my route, started taking the F to Delancey and walking, even when it added 20 minutes and the wind off the river cut straight through the hoodie. Some nights I'd ride past Canal just to prove I could, keeping my eyes on the floor, counting the ads until the sign changed the chambers. It got worse. One night the car was crowded, Friday, bars letting out, and I was standing by the pole, packed in tight. I glanced at the window and saw my reflection like always. Tired eyes, gray hood, the little rip in the left sleeve I kept meaning to sew. Only the reflection wasn't holding the pole. It was staring straight ahead, hood deeper than it should be, and the darkness inside it moved. The real me looked away. When I looked back, the reflection was normal again. Nobody else seemed to notice. Another night I was sitting, some woman beside me reading a paperback. I caught the reflection in the dark window across the car, and the seat next to me was empty. The woman was still there. I felt her coat brush my arm when the train swayed. But in the glass, there was just an empty space wearing my shape, hood up, head tilted toward where she sat. I started leaving the hoodie at home, wore a jacket, a beanie, anything else. Didn't matter. The reflection still wore the gray hood. Sometimes the seat beside me looked empty even when the car was full. People would sit, then shift away like they felt the cold spot I couldn't see. Last week I had no choice. Pouring rain, shoes soaked through. The gray hoodie was the only dry thing I owned. I pulled it on without thinking and got on at Marcy like the old days. The car emptied by Bowery. I kept the hood down, hands in my lap, staring at my knees. Canal lit up. The train slowed. Doors opened. The platform was full again. Hundreds of them, shoulder to shoulder, every one in the same gray hoodie, hoods up, facing away. The darkness inside each hood rippled like it was breathing in time. The chimes started. I didn't move. The doors stayed open longer than they should have, long enough for the smell to drift in. Wet concrete and something sweet underneath, like the inside of a pocket that's been closed too long. One of the figures turned, slow, then another. Then all of them, smooth as if they shared one neck. The darkness under the hood shaped itself into the suggestion of my face, eyes, nose, mouth, only hollow, the way a jack-o'-lantern looks before you light the candle. They didn't have eyes, but they were looking at me, waiting. The doors closed. The train moved. I got off at the next stop and walked home in the rain, hoodie soaked through, heavier than it had any right to be. I burned it that night. Watched the synthetic melt and drip black onto the fire escape. Felt better for about 6 hours. This morning, I caught my reflection in the deli window, and the hood was back. Gray, faded, pockets deep enough for everything I've ever tried to carry alone. The face underneath was mine, but the eyes were just dark, waiting to be filled. I still ride the J sometimes. Never pass Bowery if I can help it. But when the car empties and the lights dim and Canal lights up on a sign, I keep my eyes on the floor and count heartbeats until we move again. Some nights the seat beside me stays empty even when somebody's sitting there, breathing quiet against my shoulder. Some nights the window shows two of me, both wearing the hoodie, both waiting to see which one gets off. I don't know what they want. Maybe just the space I take up. Maybe just to know what it feels like when somebody finally turns around and sees them waiting. All I know is the platform's never empty anymore, and sooner or later, every ride has to end somewhere. I keep thinking, one of these nights the doors will open and I'll stand up without meaning to. walk out into all those gray shoulders and feel them close behind me like a tide. And when the train pulls away, there'll be one more hoodie facing the tracks, hood up, darkness inside moving slow, waiting for the next lonely rider who looks like he belongs.
I started in the tunnels under Grand Central in the winter of 2015, right after my wife took the kids and the dog and moved back to Pennsylvania. The money was good, the hours were bad, and nobody asked why you didn't talk much. Track level, signal work, catwalks, crawl spaces, places most commuters never even guess exist. I liked it down there. The dark was honest. It never pretended to be anything it wasn't. One night in early December, we were doing routine inspection on a relay room nobody's opened since the 70s. The door was rusted shut. Took a sawzall and two of us swearing to get it open. Inside smelled like wet pennies and old paper. My light swept across the floor and stopped on a hard hat, half buried under a collapsed cable tray. White plastic, cracked down the middle, still had the little lamp bracket on the front. The name tape on the brim was faded but readable, R. Morales. Underneath, in smaller letters, Local 147. I knew the name before I even pulled the hat free. Everybody who works the Lex knows the story. March 12, 1978. A maintenance crew was shoring up a service tunnel off Track 42 when the ceiling gave. 4 men. Only 3 came out. Rafael Morales got pinned under 30 tons of Manhattan schist and concrete. They dug for 2 days, then called it. Sealed the whole section and rerouted the catwalk. The union put a plaque somewhere topside that nobody ever dusts. I should have left the hat where it lay. Instead, I brushed the grit off and stuck it on a shelf in the relay room, like some kind of memorial. Told myself it was respect. That night, I dreamed of him for the first time. I was walking the high catwalk above the 456, the one that runs over the express tracks. The trains were running beneath me, lights strobing through the grating, but I couldn't hear them. Just my own footsteps ringing on the metal. Ahead, a man stood with his back to me, wearing soaked coveralls the color of dried blood. The fabric clung to him like it was wet, but nothing dripped. He was staring down at the tracks, one hand raised, pointing at the old beluga on his wrist. The hands were frozen at 11:46. When I got closer, he turned, slow, like his neck hurt. His face was gray, caved in on one side where the concrete had kissed him, but the eyes were alive, dark, patient, waiting. He lifted the watch toward me like he was asking what took so long. I woke up gasping, sheets twisted around my legs, the taste of tunnel dust in my mouth. Next shift, my time card wouldn't scan. The machine just beeped red and spat it back. Supervisor, guy named Kowalski who'd been riding the desk since the Giuliani years, frowned at the screen and told me the system showed me clocking in every single night at 11:47 p.m. since March 12, 1978. Same minute Morales got buried. He laughed, said it was a Ya2K ghost in the software, told me to punch in manual. I laughed too, but it came out thin. 2 nights later, I opened my locker and found a lunch pail sitting on the bench. Black metal, dented, the kind they don't make anymore. Initials scratched into the lid, RM. Inside was a sandwich wrapped in wax paper, ham and cheese on rye, still cold, mustard just the way my dad used to make it when I was a kid. A little thermos of coffee, still hot. An apple with a bruise shaped like a thumbprint. I never opened my locker for anyone, and the combination hadn't changed since the day I started. I threw the food away. The pail was gone the next morning. It kept happening. Every shift the sandwich was different. Turkey one night, peanut butter the next, but always fresh, always wrapped the same. The coffee never cooled. Once there was a note on a scrap of cardboard. "You're late, hermano." The handwriting looked like mine when I'm half asleep. I started staying topside as much as I could, taking jobs in the mezzanine, helping tourists with the kiosks. Didn't help. The dreams got sharper. Morales waiting on the catwalk, pointing at the watch that never moved past 11:46. Sometimes he'd open his mouth and dirt would pour out, soft as sand,
piling up around his boots. He never spoke, just pointing, like relief was overdue and I was the only one who could spell him. On the 7th night, the watch in my dream stopped at 11:46 and the second hand twitched backward one click. That's when I felt it, a tug behind my sternum, gentle but sure, like a hook setting. Morales looked straight at me and smiled for the first time. The left side of his face was gone, just a dark hollow full of grit, but the smile was real, grateful. I called in sick, then I called in quit, packed a few things I cared about in the Subaru, and drove north until the city was a smudge in the rear view. Took a job maintaining trails in the Adirondacks, where the only thing under me is pine needles and stone. I thought distance would fix it. It didn't. Some nights, when the wind moves through the pines just right, I hear metal grating under boots that aren't mine. I'll step outside the cabin, and the moon will light up the trail like a catwalk, and there he'll be at the edge of the trees, coveralls dark and wet, one hand raised, pointing at a wrist that still reads 11:46, waiting, patient as stone. I keep my own watch set 5 minutes fast now. When it hits 11:42, I turn all the lights on and sit with my back to the wall and wait for the minute to pass. Most nights it does. But some nights the power flickers here too, though we're 20 miles from the nearest grid. And when the darkness settles, I hear the soft clank of a lunch pail being set down just outside the door. Smell coffee brewing that nobody started. Hear a voice that sounds like mine if I'd stayed underground long enough for the city to finish with me. I never open the door anymore. I just sit in the lit room and stare at the clock and try not to count how many minutes are left until somebody else has to take the shift. They say if you're ever on the downtown 4, 5, or 6 local and it slows for no reason just south of Grand Central, look up through the grating. If the time on the platform clock is 11:46 and the second hand jerks backward, you might see a man on the catwalk in soaked coveralls, waving you over like relief's finally come. I wouldn't look if I were you. Some jobs don't let you clock out just because you walked away. Some punches stay on the card forever. And somewhere under all that stone and steel, Rafael Morales is still waiting for the man who found his hat to come take his place so he can finally go home. I keep the windows locked and the lights burning, but every night the coffee smells stronger and the sandwich on the porch is wrapped in paper that wasn't there when I went to bed. I'm starting to think relief isn't about saving somebody else. It's about learning how long you can stand watch.
I've been catching the
before you let
downtown
the dark
A at
spell
207th
you.
Inwood since I moved up there in '99. It's the end of the line, so the platform is quiet after midnight. Just the wind off the Harmon River and the faint smell of brakes that never quite cools. Most nights the train comes in scratched silver and blue, graffiti half scrubbed off, ads for lawyers and language schools nobody reads. You get on, you sit, you ride the long slope down Manhattan like you're being lowered into something that already knows your name. It was late January, the kind of cold that makes the rails sing. I'd missed the 12:47 by 2 minutes and was standing under the heater trying not to think about the fight me and Carla had that morning. Same one we'd been having for months, only louder this time. The digital sign was stuck on delayed, so when I heard the rumble coming up the tunnel, I didn't even look at the headlight. Just walked to the yellow line, hands in my pockets, ready to go home to an empty apartment and pretend I was asleep when she came in from her shift. The train had pulled in and was wrong from the first second. Silver, clean, no graffiti, no scratches. R32 cars, the old stainless steel ones they retired in 2001. I knew because my dad used to bring me to the yard when I was a kid and point them out like they were museum pieces. The doors opened with that tired sigh I hadn't heard in 20 years. Inside, every seat was empty, lights bright and steady, no flicker. It smelled like wet pennies and something sweet underneath, like the inside of a pocket that's been holding the same coins too long. Warm air rolled out and wrapped around me. I was so cold I stepped on without thinking. The doors shut, the train didn't move. Then the speaker crackled and the voice that came over it was mine. Not similar, mine.
Same Queens by way of Inwood accent, same rasp from too many cigarettes after too many fights. Stand clear of the closing doors. This is an A train to places you already missed. The car lurched forward so smooth it felt like falling. The windows went black, no tunnel lights, no platforms, just a thick tar kind of dark that pressed against the glass. My voice kept talking. Next stop, 59th Columbus Circle, where you'll lose the ring you still twist when you're nervous. I looked down. My wedding ring was gone. Not slipped off, gone. The skin underneath was pale, like it had never worn metal a day in its life. 125th Street, where you told her you were working late but sat in the car outside the bar instead. The train never slowed, never rattled. It felt like we were dropping straight down the island, faster than any A I'd ever ridden. Each announcement came 10 minutes before the thing actually happened to me, like the train was reading tomorrow's mail. 34th Penn Station, where she'll pack the suitcase while you're still pretending to sleep. I tried the doors between cars, locked. Tried the emergency lever, wouldn't budge. The smell of pennies got stronger, copper thick in the back of my throat. At Chambers, the lights dimmed to a single bulb swinging from the ceiling, like we were in some old basement, not a subway car. My voice came softer now, almost gentle. This is the end of the line. This is where you get off forever. The doors opened onto a platform I didn't know. Tiles cracked and yellowed, some missing entirely. Weeds growing up through the holes. No signs, no exits, just a long stretch lit by that one swinging bulb. The air that came in was warm and wet, like breathing in someone's mouth. Something moved at the far end, tall shapes, thin, wearing clothes I recognized because they were mine at different ages. The gray hoodie from high school, the leather jacket I lost in 2008, the hospital scrubs from when my dad died. They all stood with their backs to me, waiting. I didn't think. I just stepped back as the door started to close and threw myself against them. They shut an inch from my fingers. The train took off so hard I hit the floor. Windows stayed black for what felt like hours. No sound except my own breathing and the soft creak of the car rocking on rails that weren't there anymore. When the lights finally came up and the train slowed, the sign said 207th Street. Doors opened on the same platform I'd left, same cracked concrete, same wind off the river. Only now the car was full. Every seat taken by me. 10-year-old me in a Little League jersey, knees scabbed. 16 with a busted lip from the fight behind the bodega. 25 the night I proposed to Carla outside the diner, eyes red from crying happy for once. 38 the week my dad's lungs finally quit. 46 last year, hair going gray at the temples, looking like a man who'd started measuring life in things he didn't fix. They all sat quiet, staring at the floor or the windows or their own hands, none of them meeting my eyes. The ones closest to me had wet cheeks, like they'd been crying a long time and forgot how to stop. I stood in the doorway, afraid to move. The doors chimed, ready to close. The me in the scrubs finally looked up. His voice was mine, only hollowed out. "First cars reserved," he said. "You know the rules." The doors shut. The train pulled away empty except for me, standing there shaking, wedding ring fingers still pale and naked. I ride the A most nights now. Have to. Carla kept the apartment, I kept the route. The regular trains come in scratched and tired and safe. I always check the first car before I sit. If it's clean silver, if it smells like pennies, I wait for the next one. Sometimes I have to wait an hour. Sometimes the next one's silver too. When the platform's empty and the wind moves just right, I hear the doors open behind me, even though no train's coming. Feel the warm air breathe out across my neck. Hear my own voice over the speaker, soft and patient, announcing stops I haven't reached yet. I keep twisting the place where the ring used to be. Skin's rubbed raw now. Some nights I look down and the finger's gone clean, smooth as the day I was born, like the years in between never happened. I still get on when I have to, just never the first car. That one's reserved for the man who already knows how the ride ends, sitting quiet with all the versions of me that got off too soon, waiting for the one still riding to finally come sit down and stay.